Greetings, gaming citizens, Mike here. If you know anything about me, it's that I love indie games. Ever since getting the original Nintendo Switch, I found myself diving further down the rabbit hole of indie games. Among those initial indie games I tried once I got my Switch was Shovel Knight, a fantastic platformer developed by Yacht Club Games. Over the years, Shovel Knight saw multiple new campaigns in the Treasure Trove collection, and a few spin-offs like Shovel Knight Dig and Pocket Dungeon. However, in 2022, Yacht Club Games launched a Kickstarter for what would be their next project. Mina the Hollower, a gothic-themed action-adventure game that looks like a Game Boy-era Zelda title. After enjoying Shovel Knight and wondering if Yacht Club was gonna expand into another original IP, I was immediately interested in learning more about this title when the Kickstarter debuted. Little did I know that just a few weeks before launch, I would learn this game is in fact a Souls-like, meaning all Zelda logic goes out the window. After what felt like an eternity since the delay from the original October 31st, 2025 release date, I finally got to play Mina the Hollower early and review it for this channel. I can't thank Yacht Club Games enough for giving me a review code, as this game has been delightful to play through leading up to launch. Before we dive into things though, I do want to state one thing, as I think this is important. As of the writing and recording of this video, I have not beaten the main story. That said, I do believe that I have played a significant amount of the game to be able to properly analyze it from a mechanical standpoint. If this, for some reason, is a deterrent for you, I completely understand if you stop watching this video here. With that out of the way, let's dive into the world of Tenebrous Isle. First and foremost, we have to talk gameplay, as that is truly where this game shines. Go figure. I was surprised to learn ahead of launch that Mina the Hollower is a Souls-like, instead of a typical action-adventure game like I was initially expecting. Sure, I probably could have figured that out from the playable demo at PAX East, but I actually didn't have time to jump on it back then, so I had no clue what I was getting into until about 2 weeks ago. When I started my playthrough, I had quite a bit of a learning curve ahead of me. Up until this point, the only Souls-like experience I really delved into was playing a bit of Code Vein, so I was basically starting from zero when it came to experience in this genre. In Mina the Hollower, you have the choice of one of three weapons to start out with, ranging from a hammer for close encounters-ish, but requires charging up swings, to the daggers, which are for more quick and closer range combat, so the enemies are right next to you compared to the hammer, where enemies are about 1 or 2 blocks away. The daggers are what I ended up with because I really like spamming the attack button in games. That just happens to be my playstyle. I don't know why. Maybe it's the autism. Who knows? Despite the options you have at the start of the game, you do gain more weapon types as you progress, so you'll have the chance to change up your playstyle as you go along. Aside from your main weapon, you could also come across sidearms. These are secondary consumable items that can either deal damage or provide some kind of movement assistance. These spend a currency called jewels, and there are well over a dozen different sidearms that can be found all over Tenebrous Isle. I've found myself enjoying experimenting with these sidearms to find the ones that work for me, and I think you can absolutely string together some neat combos if you mess around a bit. True to the Souls-like genre, you also have healing items that are relatively sparse until you make your way to an underlab. Plasma vials are the equivalent to Dark Souls' Estus flasks, but their effectiveness actually changes depending on how much you damage enemies around you. If you're just running through areas and sustaining damage, you won't be able to really heal with one of your plasma vials. Instead, attacking enemies increases how much these vials heal you for, making patience around studying enemy patterns essential for exploration and survival. I should mention, since I just brought it up, but underlabs are the same as bonfires in Dark Souls. Burrowing into these areas lets you refill your vials, as well as switch around weapons you've collected and trinkets to give you an edge in certain areas should you want to experiment further with your loadout. There are several dozens of trinkets to find and use, so you'll want to dig through every crevice of the game to try and snag them all. Also in Underlabs, there is a machine that lets you bone out.
Whoa, 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 hey, 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 hey!
The main currency you collect in Mina the Hollower is bones. which are what allow you to increase the level of just a couple of stats, rather than all the fancy RPG stats you'll see in stuff like Dark Souls, etc. Mina the Hollower allows you to increase either attack, defense, your cap on jewels for sidearms, and bone stone amounts. Bone stones are a different kind of bone currency that is safe from loss upon death, so it's in your best interest to have a decent supply when out adventuring. That said, don't put all your eggs in that bone basket, as having a steady supply of bones is helpful for buying equipment and upgrades. What's neat is you can also spend bone stones in addition to standard bones if you need to make up the difference for either currency. Going back to burrowing, that's the main mechanic you'll be using in the entire game. Whether it's digging up bones, clearing 2-block gaps, dodging enemy attacks, or entering underground areas, burrowing has a wide range of uses. I greatly enjoyed the variety of ways burrowing around could help with platforming and solving puzzles, as sometimes I would stumble upon secrets just by digging around everywhere. Mechanically, there was a lot to play with here. Between trinkets, primary and secondary weapon choices in the form of sidearms, and upgrades that can be found from exploring the vast world, you could play this game a dozen times in completely different ways, and I think that is fantastic for replayability value. The only minor thing I have to criticize, though, is the lack of a tutorial for burrowing. As you move through the starting area, you pass by an underlap for the first time. Me, not knowing how to burrow, just skipped it entirely and didn't learn how to do so until fumbling around with the buttons for a bit to find which button actually burrowed. I only mention this because every other part of the game's mechanics has a brief tutorial text box, so having one for this just seemed like a strange omission from a user experience standpoint. I know Souls-likes aren't really known for their tutorials, but I feel like in this game, it makes more sense with how the rest of the abilities are explained to you. Aside from that minor bit, I found the combat to be pretty intuitive and surprised at how well the game adapts to joystick movement. Given the visual style, I had assumed it would benefit more from being played on a standard D-pad, but I had no issue running around with joystick controls. For reference, I was using a DualShock 4 controller in my playthrough. If you thought that was all Mina the Hollower had to offer in terms of gameplay depth and features, you'd be mistaken. Mina the Hollower equips the player with a suite of game-changing modifiers that can make your playthrough easier or harder, or even weirder. You'll have modifiers ranging from having infinite health to basically making the game excruciatingly difficult if you're into that sort of thing. There are already a swath of mods to toggle out of the box, but believe it or not, you unlock even more mods once you beat the game for the first time. Be warned though, as using these modifiers will make your save file ineligible to earn feats. Feats are the game's bragging rights achievements, which you may recognize if you've played any of the Shovel Knight campaigns. These challenges range from beating the game without ever losing your bones to finishing the game without spending any in shops. There's even a feat for beating the game with -1% collection or less, which is absurd to even think about doing. I don't know how you do that, but you can. Props to anyone who is able to complete those challenges. I sure as hell can't. The fun doesn't stop there, though, as Yacht Club Games made sure that you had reasons to come crawling back to Tenebrous Isle. When you beat the game, you can start New Game Plus. New Game Plus comes with a handful of changes to make your next playthrough more rewarding and challenging, including less underlabs in the world, a higher stat cap, and more bone drops, to name a few. Things can get even crazier with items shuffling to even the entire world being flipped horizontally. It doesn't just stop at one New Game Plus playthrough though, as there is a combination of different preset configurations for up to New Game Plus 8 before you run out of built-in parameters. The fact that Yacht Club Games thought this far ahead into the replayability of Mina the Hollower absolutely demonstrates confidence in the game, and I gotta say, they hit a slam dunk in the replayability department. If you immediately want to go for the hardest challenge run after beating the game once though, you are free to manually change the New Game Plus parameters to your liking. If you really want to do a New Game Plus run where previously collected items are cleared, the world is flipped, danger rank is super high, items, sidearms, and enemy stats are all shuffled, and there are less underlabs in the world, you are welcome to be absolutely psychotic. The game starts with you on a ship sailing towards the city of Osix, where a sea monster gets hold of your ship and causes the crew to wash up on the shore. It's here that your adventure abruptly begins, with you having to learn more about the world around you through NPC dialogue, like in similar games. Upon reaching the city, you learn that the 6 generators that Mina built to power the city are no longer working, and from there, your objective is clear. From there, the world is basically yours to traverse however you wish. As someone who's more used to games that are fairly straightforward and direct on where to go and what to do, this was a bit of a culture shock for me. In theory, you could go off in any direction to continue the game. It's a similar feeling to when I played The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the first time, and was thrown off by the open-ended nature of that game, considering the games I played leading up to that were very linear in structure. Brief narrative beats aside, let's take a look at the world in Mina the Hollower, both visually and gameplay-wise. Like I said, you start off in the city of Osix, but the world is mostly interconnected. Each main area has a color palette assigned to it, making areas like Septemberg and Nox's Bayou feel very distinct visually. Yacht Club Games says there are over 1,200 unique screens in Mina the Hollower, and believe me when I say that none of them feel visually dull by any means. Feels like every screen really does have a purpose, whether it's a secret to hide or a major point of interest to go to. As you traverse deeper into each main area, every few screens or so you'll find shortcuts you can open for yourself to make future travels far easier. The frequency of these shortcuts didn't feel too hand-holdy by any means, and kinda kept me going every time I died. And let me tell you, I died a lot. One thing that I did think could have been helpful was a slightly more detailed map. In the game, you can get your hands on a very general map that only shows the major areas. When I asked about the logic behind this, the developers told me that this design choice was deliberate, as they wanted the player to explore the world as they see fit, and otherwise in their own way. The open-ended nature of the game is not a bug, but more so a feature. However, I will be the first to say that this might be a bit of a deterrent for those who look at this game and at face value expect a more linear experience. While it wasn't a deal breaker for me, there were a handful of times where I was genuinely lost and not sure where to go, leading me to ask the team for tips on occasion. Sometimes I'd be on the correct screen, but not be aware that I could perform a certain trick or movement to make something happen there to progress further. And other times I would just have no clue how to get to a specific location to move forward in the game at all. Ultimately, I would not call this a bad design choice by any means. My experience wasn't negatively affected by this detail, as I did genuinely enjoy exploring the world. It's just that on occasion, circling back to the same screens over and over can sometimes make me feel a little dumb for not knowing what to do next. With that said, my advice to you is 2 things. 1, be a little patient and try absolutely every trick in your arsenal before just giving up. I said earlier that burrowing was able to help me discover a lot of secrets and rooms, and I think just remembering that would have saved me a few extra questions for the dev team. The second piece of advice, talk to everybody. In the city of Osix alone, there are dozens of NPCs that all feel like they have a reason to be there. In a lot of games, you'll see a bustling city with a bunch of just kind of NPC models walking around that you can't really interact with, but in Osix, there are maybe a couple dozen characters, but each of them have something to say that is particularly useful, and usually, when they tell you something, it is a hint of where to go next, or where you find a certain thing. So definitely talk to everybody that you come across, and also read the newspaper. The newspaper gives you a general idea of what's happening across Tenebrous Isle, so sometimes you can get an idea of roughly what part of the map you should go to after reading the paper, so I recommend doing that as well. Overall, Mina the Hollower is a fantastic experience that benefits from having a wide range of tools for the player to mess around with. Everything from the map to the gameplay mechanics encourages exploration, and it's the kind of game you'll want to savor every little pixel of. Normally, I'm not a Souls-like enjoyer. It takes a game with a major hook to get me to even consider trying something like that in that genre. But Mina the Hollower achieves a brilliant balance of enjoyable gameplay and accessibility with the difficulty at the sacrifice of not earning specific achievements, which that's a trade-off I'm absolutely willing to make. I would go as far as to say this game took me out of my comfort zone with the Souls-like genre, as I had to remind myself periodically that just because it looked like the old Zelda games doesn't mean it necessarily plays like them in terms of progression and puzzle solving. And when I say that, I mean you don't need a specific item to progress further in the game or in the world. You kind of just have the basic abilities you need, and you're able to really explore from there. If you want to try to do like speedrun tricks, go right ahead. But if you want to just kind of take it slow and just use the tools that you have to see where you can get yourself into, you can do that too. With an average playthrough taking about 20 to 30 hours according to Yacht Club Games themselves, Mina the Hollower blows the door wide open for replayability, giving the player plenty of options and toggles to personalize their own Game Plus runs. This is all wrapped up with a retro-style bow on top, featuring welcome modern enhancements like widescreen compatibility and fluid animations. All that said, there is no question that this is one of the best indies I've played this year, as well as another smash hit from Yacht Club Games. I wholeheartedly recommend giving this game a try. Even if you're not much of a Souls-like enjoyer, you might be surprised at how much you enjoy it the same way I was. Once again, thank you to Yacht Club Games for sending me a review. It was a pleasure getting to chat with the team about the game, and I can't wait to see where Yacht Club Games goes from here. That's going to be it for me. Stay vibing and thriving, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.